Let's talk about New Zealand, Craig. Got a T20 World Cup getting underway in Sri Lanka. So, I mean, you can play a lot of white ball cricket in New Zealand in the build-up to that, but of course conditions are going to be very, very difficult. Very, very different, rather. But this is a strong New Zealand white ball side. Maybe not quite as strong as ones we have borne witness to over the last 10, 15 years. It's been a fantastic period. But essentially, they're always there or thereabouts. We've, of course, know the squad that's been announced for this series. It's missing a couple of key names. Kane Williamson being the most obvious, but there's also been a few injury problems. Finn Allen is out with a foot injury. Adam Milne, ankle injury. Will O'Rourke, back problems. Glenn Phillips plays, right, if he doesn't have a groin injury. Lockie Ferguson, how important is he? And then, of course, there is the situation with Kane. Looking at this squad, first up, which of those players, and any others, Ben Sears, I don't think I mentioned him, who comes in and who drops out?
Yeah, it's probably, it's a credit to New Zealand when you list off so many names. And what they've done well in the past is they've used different series and also the format to be able to give players opportunity. Look at Robinson right now. But I don't know. In some ways, it's tough to know. First of all, conditions. You're going to Sri Lanka and India. You need to have your best players to spin. Kane Williamson, even though his record might not quite be as explosive as some of the players who are now coming in, he's a banker because you know that Kane is our best player of a spin. He's a world class in all formats. So he has to play and he'll bat 3. You want power at the top, so there's options. Robinson's pushing, someone like Finn Allen. But it's the pace one that's interesting when it comes to the bowlers. You said you got Milne, you got Sears, you got Ferguson. Well, you're not going to pick all 3 of them. You might pick one. At the moment, probably Lockie Ferguson's got the most experience, but Adam Milne, when he's fit, has shown around the world how good he can be. But you've also got Matt Henry and Jacob Duffy. So in some ways, the depth is there. Unfortunately, the biggest covers are coming out now on the pitch. So, they've got a lot of work to do and they've got a lot of headaches to be able to probably go through the next part, because the other thing is, as you've just seen tonight and heard on the commentary, this surface is not what they're going to get when you're over. So the players that are playing...
They'd wish to have this surface.
Absolutely. But what New Zealand do really well, and we're really proud of that, is that we do well at big events, ICC events. We've got a very good record. In some ways, we don't like to say we're overachievers anymore when you look at our history. We have expectations. Actually, the expectations now is we've been to enough events, we've made enough semi-finals and finals. We actually want to hoist the trophy above our heads, and that Lord still hurts. I was working on radio at the time back in New Zealand and with the old radio sport, and probably crossing over to you. That still hurts because that was our real opportunity. We've been to other finals. We've been to T20, the one in Melbourne when Brendan McCullum captained the side. So we're desperate now to win a trophy, not just to be, participants in the semi-finals.
Yes, I wasn't going to mention 2019, but one thing I will say about that is I remember going over to New Zealand in the October of 2019, and I was really struck by how desolate people were about that defeat. It was the same year that the All Blacks had been knocked out of the Rugby World Cup by England, and I couldn't meet anyone who told me that mattered anywhere near as much as losing the cricket. And for a country like New Zealand to say that that losing in the cricket hurt more than losing in the rugby, that was a bit of an eye-opener. But I don't want to lose you too early on. I've done this before.
You're right, though. I was so lucky enough. I've been in commentary when I finished, and I've seen some amazing things. Brendan McCullum got 300. Some great series. But that one really did hurt. I don't know why, whether we went down to the boundary count back or whatever, but I remember talking to Ian Smith, who was doing the commentary after the game, and he said he moped back to his hotel. His head was dropped. He felt desolate. He felt broken. And you're right. I mean, the country normally, we'll get on with it. It really did hurt, and probably until we win one, even though we won the Test Championship, albeit in COVID times, and that was really special for us, and that meant a lot. Until we probably get a white ball trophy above our heads, I think that's going to hurt for a long time.
Yeah, of course. Reached the final in 2015 as well, and a T20 final against Australia in 2021. There's quite a few of them around that time. But going back to this New Zealand setup, with Williamson, it's a guessing game. but could this be his last T20? I mean, there's this story, there's opinion pieces in the New Zealand Herald and in the New Zealand media. Williamson hasn't played a lot of T20 cricket internationally for a while. He's still part of the ODI setup and of course plays Tests, but he's reaching that stage now, isn't he, where he can't play forever. There is this Icon series at the end of 2026 against Australia, and New Zealand are in England in June. So, in 2026, Kane Williamson's probably looking at the schedule thinking, well, I've got three. I've got my last tour of England and probably my last tour of Australia. What better way to bow out of the red ball game? There's a T20 World Cup in Sri Lanka in February. Hasn't played a lot. Then there won't be. It'll be another 2 years until the next one. Although, interestingly, that is in New Zealand. So maybe he's got a New Zealand and Australia. Maybe that's where he could be. And then, of course, there is a 50-over World Cup in South Africa in 2027. So that could be it for, the greatest batter New Zealand have ever created, you'd think.
Yeah, it's a sad time. Don't you bring in the tears for my John. We're thinking about Kane Williamson not playing
anymore.
Let's
go back to the 2019 World Cup.
But I think the next 12 months coming up to Christmas time, you're right. The Tour to England, pinnacle for any New Zealand cricketer growing up is to come over here and play and tour here. We haven't had a lot of tours of Australia, and was only 3 years ago we had a Boxing Day test, the first one in over 20 years, and the MCG on day one was 3/4 New Zealanders, and we've got that opportunity, 4 test matches. So for Kane, I'd say, yep, that's priority, coming to England and then playing in Australia, playing another Boxing Day test, taking on 4 test matches over there, and then the opportunity, then I'd say maybe reassess. But all I know is that when he does give up, we're not going to be able to replace him. And lucky enough, I again talked about commentating, got to enjoy, Southey, Wagner, Bolt, New Zealand's trio that were brilliant, and got to see them at their peak. Being able to watch Kane Williamson, it's just like watching Joe Root. You sit down, and when they come in and play, and in some ways it was interesting. Some people say you wouldn't, you have people like Brendan McCullum who used to play, the players that you couldn't wait to sit down and watch, and you cross the street. Some people said sometimes like watching Joe Root and Kane Williamson, would you cross the street? So, I'm not sure, but being a cricket lover, you just sit down, and I've loved being here in England this year, and when I've had the opportunity when we haven't been playing with the Blaze and the women's competition, watching Joe Root bat is the greatest thing, to sit on the couch and watch they go about the way they go about it. I know Harry Brook's brilliant. He's got amazing skills, and he just entertains. But for me, Joe Root, Kane Williamson, they're the ones that you want to sit down and you just sit there and just admire what they do. And when they're not there, we're going to miss them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the comedian Stephen Fry said we're living in a Joe Root era, or a Joe Root age, and we're going to tell our grandkids that we once saw the great Joe Root bat. And I think the same can be said for Kane Williamson. Obviously has been at the pinnacle of world cricket for such a long time, and it's almost unthinkable to consider cricket being played internationally without he or Joe Root. We should have a few more years from Joe, you'd feel.
Well, the game's changed too, and they look at, and that's one thing I don't mind. Like, Kane Williamson is not taking national contracts at the moment. He's picking and choosing. Well, first of all, he's doing that right. But do I need him playing this series right now against England? Not really. I'd rather him be up for the big series or prepared. An opportunity he can play around the world. And yeah, he might go to South Africa and he misses this series. That's okay. The other thing that we've got to remember, New Zealand's a little bit different. You don't get opportunities around the world unless you're performing well for New Zealand. So our grassroots, so to speak, are a domestic game. There might be a big change next year when it comes to our local competition. There's been a lot of talk about whether a team should join the Big Bash. That'll never happen. I think you might see New Zealand cricket and maybe some, our franchise could come into our game.
Do you think that could happen?
I think
it's interesting.
Yes.
You should mention that. It's a Super Smash. It's a domestic league. One of the things I noticed going through a little bit of prep for this series is how many of the players in this side, in this New Zealand side, are in the side because of their performances in the Super Smash.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's, I talk about it, and maybe we're a bit biased. Our Super Smash is played, and it's just alongside the Big Bash. Now, the Big Bash is obviously, one of the big competitions around the world. The difference is obviously the stadiums, and you've got the bright lights, you've got the marketing, you've got overseas players. But the quality of cricket, and again, I commentated for 5 or 6 years doing it, was very, very good. Our pitches are flat. They're probably the flattest in the world nearly. So you've got to be able to play. But you did right. You look through the list of players right now, and Robinson, as I said 2 years ago, didn't have a Wellington contract. Wellington have got a great ability to pick players, put them in a team, give them confidence, and they end up a New Zealand team. Finn Allen's another one. Michael Bracewell went up there from Otago. Nathan Smith went from Otago. He's there. You've got James Neesham went, even though he was established by that time. Rachin Ravindra, they picked and managed brilliantly from a very young age when he was in the New Zealand youth team, under 19 team. Gave him great opportunities. Now look at him. So Wellington, and it pains me to say it being from Otago, do a brilliant job at understanding young players and then how to get the best out of them, and then they come onto the international scene and they actually perform. Sears is another one who's been doing it, bowling quick. Logan Van Beek's there playing, who also plays for Holland. He's been over here, I think, playing, was he at Leicester?
He has been over here. I messaged him. He's quite a character, isn't he?
Good guy, yeah, very good guy. So you're right, so performance...
So the pathway's there.
Yeah, Jacob Duffy.
And you play so much more white ball cricket in New Zealand compared to red ball cricket. It kind of makes sense. It seems to be working.
Yeah, and I mean, it's understanding what you're trying to do with players and what development looks like. And one thing you probably say about the Black Caps, and even now when you listed off all those names, Gary Stead, or Mike Hesson originally, and then Gary Stead. Like, Gary Stead came in at a tough time because New Zealand were flying. Mike Hesson stepped away, carried that on, and did brilliantly. Gary Stead's played cricket himself for 15, 16 years. He also was a coaching director at the age of 19, so he was involved in coaching as long as when he was playing as well. Then he coached the White Ferns, so they actually understand what coaching's about and what development's about, and they've done a really good job. And Rob Walters too came over from South Africa, came to Otago, then went to Central Districts, been involved in our domestic game. They understand our people, they understand how things work, and they get the best out of people, and that's what then flows into the Black Caps.